Hi everyone, I'm Reena, and this is Resonant Space. I often think that because of the nature of the work I do, I get asked to comment a lot on cultural appropriation, and specifically about how to correctly engage with a culture so that, you're respectful of it as you're using that source material and that music. And I hear this question in two different ways. One is that it's really thoughtful, right? It's about people wanting to do right by a culture that they're not from. But then I also hear a lot of fear in it, right? This idea that if you're not from a culture, every interaction has to be so airtight and so absolutely perfect because the fear of misinterpreting something or something being misinterpreted and, the ramifications that go with that are just a risk that is too great to bear. And I think there are so many people who have spoken much better than I can about how we actually engage these other cultures, right? It's things like, making sure that when you use something from another culture, you give credit where credit is due, or that you're really honest about how much you actually know about another musical system, or, what your relationship is to that other musical culture, or that, the work that you're doing is benefiting the place where that original source material is from. All of these things and so much more are these best practices. But as a creator, I will say, and even though it's really important to be reverent, it's also really important to understand how the timing of that reverence works. I often think about comedians, right? And some of these comedians have these amazing jokes and, they're so fresh and they're so exciting and you're kind of at the edge of your seat thinking, oh my God, what are they gonna say next? And as I'm sitting there, listening to comedians, I'm often thinking, what was the first version of that joke? I mean, it was probably so terrible that the comedian could only say it to themselves in the privacy of their own studio. Like they couldn't even say it to another person. It was that bad. But then in the process of honing it for prime time and testing it out on a bunch of different audiences, they found a version of it that just towed the line. But if they hadn't cast the net that wide in their own private spaces, they wouldn't have been able to find that point of resonance and excitement and tension that makes their jokes so wonderful. And so I think if you're asking this question of respect for another culture too late, if you're asking what that looks like too late, after the piece is already out in the world, then of course there can be huge damage caused, both for you and for the people whose ancestors created that source material. There can be a real breach of relationship and that can feel awful. But I think if you also ask the question too soon, you're risking stifling the work itself. And you're not even really giving it room to breathe and become what it needs to be. So I think this week I'd love you to think about a place where you might feel a little bit afraid to be irreverent and where your intention is to be deeply respectful. And then maybe move past that fear and think about what the right time is to move from that irreverence into respect and, into deep regard for that other musical culture. And this is so that you can be in the right relationship with the people whose ancestors created that work. And so that you can also have that room to breathe and grow and try things out so that you can see things in your own unique, unusual way and create work that feels exciting and fresh from that perspective.